Good morning or afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Pradeep, Head of Product Development and Innovations at Morphin Server. A warm welcome to our esteemed customers, and we thank for being part of Morphin journey all through these years. Morphin core competency is to provide omni-channel ecosystem banking platform, which concentrate mostly on the digital channels, the wallets, etc. However, we strongly feel the need uh, to have to consider security also as a critical component in the banking industry, and specific security related services like VAPT or end-to-end audit, code review, forensic investigation, etc. are the core competencies which banks were looking at during our previous engagements on the security front. So for that, we are happy to announce that we have partnered with SISA, one of the leading forensic-driven cybersecurity company, to introduce their products to our esteemed customers. So Morphing can drive the whole engagement, or if clients are interested to have a direct relationship with SISA, we can facilitate that. We keep hearing that data is the new oil, right? So at Morphin, we believe that financial data is an oil well, which contains much and more sensitive data. The sensitive data can be customer profile related or transactional related or account information or card related information, the OTPs, the PINs, etc. And when it comes to other verticals like insurance, it can be the customer health related details or his specific health documents, the claims, etc. Or in general, the customer's call log or social media interaction, the SMS, etc. So in this webinar, we are going to concentrate on sensitive data. First, we are going to cover three important aspects. First one would be the sensitive data. What are they and why should we protect it? And next is the data leaks. And finally, we are going to see how the data discovery will happen. Where is your sensitive data is located and who all have access to that sensitive data. With that, I would like to introduce our speakers for today. Mr. Arobin Patra, who is heading the cyber security of products at SISA, and he's with SISA for past 11 years, and he has worked on various cyber security products at SISA, and he's helping the organization to secure the network, infrastructure, and the products. Also, Mr. Patra is a certified AWS solution architect, and he has experience in building various SaaS-based applications in different cloud technologies. Also, he has experience in applying machine learning and artificial intelligence in the cyber security domain. Welcome, Arvind Patra. Also with us, we have Mr. Venkatramana, who is heading the cyber security products, and he leads the global sales team of the cyber security products. And as a business leader, his core responsibility is to includes to train the security team, the sales team, and identify the emerging markets. He has a vast experience of 20 plus years in different verticals like BFSI, healthcare, SaaS, cyber security products, etc. He works closely with the customers and also the partners to enable them transfer and also grow sustainably in a rapidly evolving market. Welcome, Mr. Venkatramana. Before we get started, few housekeeping rules. This webinar will last for 55 minutes. The first 40 minutes, our speakers will present on the sensitive data topic, and the last 15 minutes, we concentrate on the Q&A session. All the attendees by default will be on mute so that our speakers can present without any interruption. In case if you have any questions during the course of the presentation, please feel free to post it in the Q&A section that is located in the right side of your screen. We are going to answer all of the questions in the Q&A session. With that, I would like to hand over the discussion to Arobin Patra and Venkat.
Thanks, Pradeep. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us today. So I am Arobinda from SISA. So basically, SISA is a forensic-driven cybersecurity company. We are trusted by organizations across the globe for securing their businesses with robust and collective security services and solutions. So every year we do more than 1,000 engagements, and so far we have served more than 2,000 customers. So we are one of the we are top 4 PCI forensic investigators across the globe. And we have presence over more than 14 countries. We are based out of Bangalore, India. So today's agenda will be mainly on the sensitive data and data security. So what is sensitive data and what are the regulations are around the sensitive data? Where actually what are the sources of data or sensitive data? How to protect them? Then also we'll go through how we can proactively identify those data, because data is everywhere, right? And there are a lot of huge amount of data is there. So how we can proactively run the data discovery tool and identify those data and protect them. So we can go through a few of the features of the SISA RADAR tool and what are the various options on the SISA RADAR tool, which helps organizations to secure their sensitive data. And then finally we can go for the Q&A sessions. Yeah. So before talking about the sensitive data, we can talk about data. So definitely the data is everywhere. So it is a new form of creating the wealth and the power. Nearly every company is now a data company. So if you'll see the technologies like big data, data science, and data analytics, right? So the importance of data is growing, and the data is going to get bigger and bigger. So every day companies are processing billions of sensitive data or data, right? So the companies, they must have taken some controls and handle the sensitive data properly, which will be definitely which is determinant to their growth and profitability. Yeah. So now we can talk about 3 components. One is what is sensitive data, and how to protect them where the data leaks can happen, and then what are the various tools you need to do it so that we can proactively secure the sensitive data and identify the sensitive data, and what are the various steps you need to take in order to secure those sensitive data. So what is sensitive data? So sensitive data is any information which should be protected from unauthorized access and should not be disclosed to maintain the security of individual and organizations. So few example of data which I can tell is like payment card data, right? PAN, expiry date, CVV number. All those data should be confidential and it should not be shared to anyone. So if any data breaches will happen for this data, then definitely there is a lot of reputations and monetary loss also will happen. Similarly, there are other personal identifying information like national ID, passports, and all those informations are there, which is part of a lot of privacy regulations. So there are different kind of set of data like healthcare data, medical data, and a few of the data, there are 4 categories of data like sensitive, confidential, private, and internal, public and internal. So all the sensitive and confidential data should be, taken some additional measures to secure them. So in case the data is exposed, then organizations definitely become fertile grounds for massive data breaches. And compliance bodies, like, there are many compliance privacy regulations are coming into picture for all different countries, right? Like the GDPR, CCP, LGPD. And then for African countries like POPI and for Nigerians also, they have the privacy laws. So each of the laws, they can impose a lot of huge fines if the privacy regulations are violated. And then when breaches occurs, definitely the organizations also will have the monetary loss as well as the reputation loss. So that's why the sensitive data is important, and how it matters to basically African countries in the Africa. So definitely there are a lot of breaches happening around the globe, right? So if you'll talk about the African countries, so data of more than 1.4 million South African was illegally accessed from Access Bank server in April this year. But the data of breach only came into light in September 2021. So many of the customer data has been, illegally accessed and exposed. And then 79% of the Kenyan, South African, and Zimbabwean business have been experiencing an increase in cybersecurity threats. So there are huge amount of cybersecurity threats have been increased, and the breaches also are happening around the world. If you'll see during the last 2 hours, the breaches are almost increased, more than 80%. And Interpol claimed in 2021 in the report that 90% of the African business are operating without the necessary cybersecurity protocols in place. So definitely to prevent all these breaches, we need to have these proper cybersecurity protocols and controls. So in South Africa has the third highest number of cybercrime victims worldwide at a cost of 147 million a year. So that is quite huge. So these are the few of the data which we have collected based on the market analysis. And then so the data basically, if you'll see, data is everywhere. So few of the example, like 50% of all corporate data is stored in the cloud. So everyone is moving to cloud, and a lot of them, they are still in the on-premise also. But the data is everywhere. And then all this data, out of the data, 48% of data is like sensitive data. Okay. And then 63% of the organization, they don't know what is the sensitive data, because they are using the various kind of devices. The data is stored in S3 buckets or any file server database, and it is stored in NAS storages. So they don't know what is the sensitive data. So which is a very a key area for any organizations. So first of all, they should know where is the sensitive data and how to discover that data. Okay. So I think we have a poll for 30 seconds. So Ashwini, I think you can. So we can start the poll. Okay, so yeah, we got the we got the answer. So I think so 50% is showing it's robust, and 50% somewhat vulnerable but improving, and weak 0%. Yeah, so definitely so the since all the privacy regulations are coming into the picture, then definitely we need to keep on improving the privacy. So what are the various controls we need to take? How to identify the sensitive data, how to protect them, and basically how to classify them. So we need to start working on that. Yeah. So I can so we'll go through a few of the data privacy regulations, which basically is formed to secure the sensitive data, or basically secure the data of the individuals. So in addition to the right to privacy, the Nigeria National Information Technology Agency, NITDA, released the NDPR law basically in 2019 to safeguard citizens' rights and keep their business competitive globally, right? So this program is similar kind, like GDPR in the European Union, and basically the NDPR mandates all organizations that process the personal data of more than 1,000 data subjects, so in a period of 6 months, and if it is like more than 2,000 data subjects in a period of 12 months, they have to submit the data protection audit report to NITDA. Okay. So every year before March 15, they have to submit this audit report. If there are more than 1,000, it's like 6 month timeline. If there are more than 2,000 data subjects they're processing, it is like in 12 months they have to submit it. And they have also the fines with them, right? So if less than 10,000 data subjects, so and if any privacy violations will happen, then 1% of annual gross revenue or 200K naira will be, whatever is greater, will be charged. Same way, if they are processing more than 10,000, then either 2% of annual gross revenue or previous year or maybe sorry, or 100K naira, whichever is greater, so that the fine is there for the NDPR. So this is how the privacy regulations are becoming very strict in terms of fines and regulations. So the data protection law in the regulations in Rwanda, Kenya also have established key data protection principles. Then for South Africa also, this July 2021, they came up with the POPI, this Protection of Personal Information Act. So this is also similar to the right to privacy and right to delete. All those clauses are there for this particular privacy regulations. Same way in the Tanzania also, the Electronic and Postal Communication Act has been safeguarded to prevent the personal data. So these are the various, the privacy laws and regulations which is there in the African countries, and few of them definitely have a lot of fines associated with that with them. Yeah. So how data leaks basically happens? So if you'll say the data is everywhere, right? And so the hackers basically will get inside your organizations. They will identify some kind of vulnerability and to have the unauthorized access. The vulnerability can be any application level vulnerability, like the SQL injection. They can do it and they can steal the data, confidential data, right? And there might be certain ports which are left open, and they can get inside the endpoints and steal the data. There might be insider threats who can get hold of some some confidential or sensitive data, and they can sell to outsiders. And then there are phishing and malwares. So the phishing and malwares has been increased drastically, basically. So the phishing attacks has been 50 times more than in the last 1 year itself. So each of them, the employee they'll be receiving the phishing emails, and once they'll open, right, so their system will get compromised, and then the hackers can steal the data and then pass the data, or they'll steal the data and transfer that data to their C2C server. So basically, the sensitive data is everywhere. Like email servers, also you can get it. So in a few of the email servers, they can get inside and they can steal the sensitive information. And basically, the server configurations, right? So if there is some weak configuration in the servers, then whether it's a cloud, like some S3 buckets, where the sensitive data is stored, right? And if that is hosted, that is made as public, which is part of a misconfiguration, so or weak server configurations, then the hackers or the anyone can get access to that particular sensitive data. So that will be like massive breaches. So this is how where the sensitive data leak can happen. And so there are a lot of IoT devices, many other devices also coming into picture now. So the data can be anywhere, and the form of leak can be anything. But how to prevent them basically is to identify your data, where your data is there. For that, you need to do a data discovery, and then classify them based on the very critical data level, sensitive or confidential, and then put appropriate control to protect those data. Like your sensitive data cannot be lying around a user desktop. So once you discover and identify the sensitive data is a particular system, then only you can go and protect your data. You can move the data to a more secure locations, or you can encrypt that data, or you can apply certain kind of policies where the user cannot move the data outside of your organizations. So all those things you can do it. So basically, why you protect the sensitive data? Definitely, the breaches has been increased 12% over the past 5 years, okay, to 3.8 million per breach, and the cost per breach recorded like $242. That is a huge number. And then the sensitive data leakage cost, including compensating affected customers. Your customers will ask for you will have the contracts with them, so your customers will ask the compensations for the data leakages. So then setting up the incident response efforts and investigating the breaches. And then there are legal fees and regulatory penalties, which I was talking about, the NDPR or the GDPR. There are a lot of penalties associated with them. So there are many, so definitely, so securing the sensitive data, protecting the sensitive data is required to avoid all these circumstances. Yeah. So now if you'll see the data is sensitive data, once is securing the data. But before securing, you need to first discover or identify the data. If you'll see today's scenario, right, so the data is everywhere. It is every day one organization, is adding new devices, different type of devices. few of them are storing in cloud. They're using multi-cloud environment. Few of the data will be stored in S3 buckets. Few of the data will be stored in Azure blobs or NAS storages. So data can be anywhere. It can be in any file format, PDF, Excel, images. It can be in any mail servers, right? So, and every day organizations are processing billions of data. So definitely it's going beyond control to manage the data, because organizations doesn't have the complete visibility where the data is and where the sensitive data is. It may be lying around in some servers which is not protected by any antivirus software. Anyone can get inside that particular systems. But once you will identify that particular data is there in that particular system, then only we can take appropriate actions or controls and to protect them. So most of the data lakes, so what are the form of the data is? One is the intellectual properties. So related to your organizations, right? Any intellectual property, any trade secrets, or if you're filling any IP. So all those can be stolen, and your competitors, they can misuse it. What's personal information based on the privacy regulations, like the passport, driving licenses, and all those things, the personal informations. So that is like the data which can be part of the breaches. And then the financial data, definitely that is like highly critical for any organizations, any financial data like banking account or credit card details. And then consumer behavior data. So often we are like for marketing or for our own user behavior analysis, we collect the consumer behavior data also. So one thing on the privacy regulations, so it's not about the data, but what data we should collect. What is our business requirement? Whether our business need that particular data to collect from each of our consumers or not. So those things, how we can identify which data we are storing it. So once you'll identify and discover the data, which data is being stored, then only we can take appropriate control. And then there are protected health informations, like the HIPAA guidelines. They have also mentioned what are the healthcare data, medical data, like the biometric data. So those are the most leaked forms of data. And then data can be in different formats, like the structured data and unstructured data. Structured data in the sense like these can be like your database tables or the Excel files, which are the structured data. So which is maybe it's quite easy to identify the database. So like you can go and see what data we are storing. But the unstructured data, like image or PDF, it can be stored anywhere. Like any customer care executive, they can write down the credit card informations, or while taking some of the the identity, they can keep in their desktop. So all those kind of unstructured data, or to identify those unstructured data becomes very challenging, and that is where the most of the leaks happens. So this can be for different sectors: healthcare, banking, and BPO, IT, government. Any kind of sectors can contain this data. Yeah. So how we can maintain a good privacy regulation practice to secure all the sensitive data? What are the various things we need to adapt? So one is adoptions and compliances. So we need to recognize the best practices and engage for efficient compliances with the various data privacy laws. Not only for data privacy, if you'll see any kind of security, like the PCI, HIPAA, ISO, that talks about the data security. The main focus is on the data, because the security is built around the data, and whatever our security infrastructure we are building is only to secure the data, right? And then we need to be transparent to customers and the users. So what are the privacy policies? Basically, they talks about the consent management. So what are the data of a particular customers we are authorized to store, and what consent actually the customers is giving? We have to store only that data. We should not store the data which you do not have any consent. So in the websites also, suppose you are storing any cookies information, IP details. So we have to get the consent from the user. Then only we need to store it. That's what the privacy regulation that talks about the consent management, to store the data of the sensitive data of the users. And then the regular checks, basically have the regularly auditing and testing the controls of the company. Definitely we need to be in line with those, all those should be in line with those, all those regulations. Okay. And then we need to be prepared for the futures, because all these privacy regulations are coming into the picture, and they're going to become more stronger and stronger in future, because the data is becoming will be a very crucial part of any organizations, right? So this data privacy laws will be very stronger in future. So we need to start preparing as an organization how we can, how we can build all those best practices within our organizations to secure those sensitive data. Yeah. So yeah. So we can go for our next poll. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, yeah. So I think we got our poll results. So it's quite interesting because 67% they told internal bad actors, and 33% outdated policy and protections. So definitely internal bad actors. Yeah, I completely agree, because it's the internal users who stores that data. Because like any database guy who has access to the database, right? They can take a backup of that data, maybe either knowingly or unknowingly also. Like they can take the data for some testing purpose, and they can keep that data in their systems, which can be leaked, or any customer care executive or anything in anyone, they can take a snapshot and they can store for the reference, which can be leaked. So definitely, the internal bad actors uh, are the yeah is mostly contribute to the data protection risk. And definitely we need to identify what data and where they are storing the data. Yeah, so that's true. Yeah. So now talking about the sensitive data and which forms the data, and how to identify those data, how to secure them. So what are the best practices which you can follow? So one thing is, first, the data, as I mentioned, it can be any type of files. So PDF, images, even the hackers or any internal users, what they can do, the image will look like, it's a plain images of a photograph, but inside that image, they can inject, the text, and they can hide that, the sensitive informations, and they can steal that sensitive information from the images also. Images or video files itself. Same thing, sensitive data, which is stored in different OSs. So the organizations can use any kind of OSs, right? Like IBM AIX, your different OS flavors like Windows, Linux systems, many kind of different operating systems, and files inside those operating systems. So sensitive data can be anywhere, right? It can be in your Android devices. And sensitive data can be in your email servers or email accounts. So like currently we're also currently the employees, they're using the Teams, right, or the charting windows. So they can share the sensitive information in the Teams itself, and though someone can go and have the access of the their team messages or the files. So that is also one potential leak of the sensitive data. And then sensitive data can be specific to different regulatory standards. Like GDPR will have their like 32 EU countries national IDs. They consider as sensitive. Like for different countries, they will have different national IDs, different identity card. So each and every national, we need to identify and discover their sensitive data. And then there are some common sensitive data, like or the common, the personal PII data like name, date of birth, and all those things are there. And then sensitive data is basically stored across your IT infrastructure and cloud, right? As I mentioned, the S3 buckets. So someone can store in the S3 buckets and make it public. So anyone can go and download it. Okay, so that becomes potential risk. So basically, the next step is the data classification. So once you identify or discover the data, where it is and in which form, then the data classifications. Basically, data classifications, any organizations can choose based on their, based on their, what are the data they are going to store and what kind of data they are going to store. So there are different kind of data based on the criticality, like the sensitive, confidential, public, and internal. So sensitive data, like the religious views, okay, or your very highly sensitive financial data. Confidential data, like your HR documents, okay, or your sort of documents related to employees, like where you're providing their passports, emails, and everything. So all those data basically you need to classify which data is confidential, which data is sensitive, and then you can apply certain policies, where you can protect those data. If sensitive data is there, you need to store in a particular locations, or if confidential data is there, right? You can apply some kind of policies where it should not be uploaded in emails attachments if the file is marked as sensitive. So those are the various kind of data classification you can do it and secure those those kind of data. Then data is stored in various formats like structured and unstructured data and semi-structured, which I mentioned. So definitely, so the traditional algorithms, they can identify data in the structures and a structure form, but unstructured and semi-structured data is very difficult to find. So where organizations, they need the automations tools who can identify using the machine learning features to scan all those data. So like the NER, though, so like the personal data, right? So one file can contain the passport, driving licenses, and all those things. But that passport or the driving licenses belongs to whom? That also you should identify. Then only certain kind of privacy regulations which talks about the data subject request. Then only you can automate the data subject request for your entire organizations. So this is what these are the steps the securing the data. Yeah. So we have our next poll questions. One more minute.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we got our results. Okay. Thank you. So yeah. So for Venkat, my colleague Venkat will present few of the slides from here onwards. Yeah, Venkat, over to you.
Thanks, AP. Thank you all. Good morning, all. Once again to everyone. I think we have just learned what is the importance of sensitive data, why data classification has to be done, why we have to secure the sensitive data, and where all it resides. Those these days we have just understood in the last 30 minutes, right? Before going to why data discovery process, right? We also learned that what are the Privacy Acts, what is the implications if there is a data breach, and how. That is one part of the coin, right? Other side, so the organizations were built with many years of putting hard work, right? The trust is built with our customers, with our partners. Once the data breach happens, the image of the organization will turn, and slowly the customers lose the trust. So that's where why the data discovery as well as the remediation part comes into the picture. Why we have to secure the data, which is sensitive data, whether it's sensitive or confidential or even the public private data too. There are simple processes that any organization to follow. One is integration of the endpoints of the databases where the sensitive data is lying. And many times we come across, we also being one of the PFI, global PFI, during our investigations, we do come across that the ingress point is not the PCI scope, it's beyond PCI scope. Some of the breaches which occurred due to contractual obligations, I am not able to, unable to disclose the names. But we identified some, the breaches occurred, beside the PCI scope. The scope is, beyond, right? So the understanding is that the data is everywhere, and we have to identify the data across, all the endpoints, whether it comes under the PCI or non-PCI scope, and all the hyper cloud or even the databases and servers level. That is the more important, including the dormant systems which are there in our corporate environment. That's the first process, the first step what we have to do. There are many tools, automated tools, and SISA Radar is a one where hundreds of customers across globe using the tool because of it's more of an automation that tool has been undergone. As I said, we are being a PFI investigators, we know the customer pain points and we understand the challenges what these customers are facing on day in and day out. So we are all the learnings are put in the data discovery tools to make the the organization's data to be secured at the highest level possible, right? So the process is simple 4 steps, right? When we talk about the data discovery, one is the data classification comes into the picture, where automated tools is important to classify the data, because as my colleague rightly said, if it is a structured data, it's fine, but we can just log into the databases and check the tables and we can take the remediation. What about the unstructured data? Unstructured data, as we talked about, the images, there may be instances where we store even in audio files. Some of the organizations, we have our call center where the card data is spelled and it's recorded. How are you going to secure those audio files? So this all comes into the picture when we talk about the data discovery process. SISA Radar, it will definitely help. And why I'm bringing the radar name here, just to give you understanding how the tool behaves, right? In the live environment, I would like to present this through a presentation. Definitely for the more information, we'll be able to give you more insights in detail due to short of time. Just I'll go in brief now, right? The second comes to the discovery, right? Whether it's once it's classified, once you discover is the structured or unstructured data. So how are you going to discover and what are the file formats that you might be having? And many organizations, right, they store without even extension files, right? That's a challenge. How are you going to identify those? As my colleague rightly said, there will be images which is injected with the text file, and where it's very difficult to find out humanly, it's not possible, right? And humanly, identifying the sensitive data across all the corporate network, at network level or DB level, hypercloud level, it's highly impossible. That's where the organization should go with tested tools, and in the tested tools you'll have all the options which I'm talking about, where you can classify the data, where you can identify the unstructured data, which is very crucial, right? This is the one part of the coin. Other side, how are you going to remediate, right? Once again, the tools behave differently, and when you are using open source tool, it's very difficult. We have to do it manually, right? And as my colleague said earlier, the open source tool will not help you to identify data in across many platforms, and it will not support many file types, where there is going to be a challenge, right? So all the data leaks, when you see even the recent data breaches, it's across different multiple file formats it was identified. So you have to, once is the identifying and then classifying, then discovering, then you have to go with the remediation. So the remediation is the key here. There are two aspects once again when it comes to the remediation. One, let me talk about the PCI side. Other remediation when we talk about the Privacy Act side. Of course, PCI side, once you take identify the data, directly the tool like Radar will help you to take remediation either by masking or deleting the data, which is basic requirement of the PCI DSS. But when we talk about the Privacy Acts, where the PII data of the particular data subject is stored, so there is once again there is a retention period. So you can't delete such data. You have to either encrypt or you have to quarantine the data to secure it. And anytime the data subject may ask you what are the data that you are storing for that particular data subject. The tool is very much important, like SISA Radar will help you there. Right? Radar will help you to identify, for example, today, ABC sends an email, he might be an ex-employee, or he might be a customer, he might be your partner. He will ask you to send the details of the particular data subject under the POPI, or which is South African Privacy Act, or you talk about NDPR of Nigeria or EBOC of Tanzania. So when you talk about any privacy acts, including GDPR, CCPA, if the organization dealing customers in Europe as well as in US, they have to comply with CCPA as well as GDPR. In such cases, if the data subject is requesting you to send the data, what will be stored, how are you going to identify in structured, unstructured format? Right, that's where the tool is going to help you out, right? So there will be, you can create a data subject request with the data discovery tools, where you can download what are the data which is you are storing it. If it is beyond retention period, if the data subject is required to delete it, you can go ahead and delete it. So there are multiple processes to be followed for this. There are multiple remediation steps. There are multiple classification levels where individual organization can follow their individual classification with the tools like Radar. And the main pain area of what we come across, across of hundreds of customers globally who are using Radar, they say that we would like to scan on monthly basis, but somehow they miss to block their calendar, they miss to do the scanning, which is very dangerous by nature, right? So the tools which is tested tools like Radar will help you to automate those scans, right? So what it does is you can schedule the future scans. The CISOs can relax freely because the tool takes care of the burden of the CISOs or any of the ID heads, because the tool will give you a report automatically. Though you're forgetting to initiate a scan, the tool will initiate a scan across all platforms which has been added to the targets, right? It will give you a peace of mind at the end of the day, right? So then what are the tools where we require? I think my colleague was covering where all the sensitive data is stored. I think one point I'd like to highlight here again, which is not by me, which is reference from Verizon data breach stats, which says 63% of the organization don't know where the data is lying. That is one of the risky factor, I think, which is very important. When the organization don't know where the data is lying, there is humanly not possible to take the remediation. If we know that the data is at database level, or it's at servers or at emails, then we know how to delete that data. But as per the stats, which is by Verizon, it says that 63% of the organization don't know where the data is lying. That's where the hackers enter. The ingress point always is a non-PCI, then they will try to steal the data, then it's available in black market, right? So that's where the tools like Radar will help you, where the data can be discovered in hypercloud or at any endpoint, either Linux or Mac OS, or even in work from home scenario. Because of the pandemic conditions, we all work from home, and sometimes we miss scanning and taking remediations, right? So that's where the tools like Radar will help you to identify across any file formats. It will support all the file formats, which I can say more than 500 plus file formats. And what we have done here, maybe I'd like to just give more insights about the data discovery tools today. There are on-premise versions, there are cloud versions. Because of the COVID, right? So the tools now, it is a hybrid now. For the corporate network, you can use hybrid tools. For the people who are working from home, it's very difficult for us to send an agent and he will send a report whether he will run the scan or not. These are the challenges with the IT head or the admin will face. In such cases, you can use cloud native, the SaaS-based tools, where the admin will have control on what all the data he's storing, and he can take the remediations. And just sort of bringing out one of the case study of the banking and insurance sector here. This banking has got more than 100K endpoints. To give you a brief, and they had many challenges because of the environment was dynamic in nature. They were unable to deploy agent because the scope was very huge, and they were unable to find data in multiple file formats. And there were some files without extension also. The data was there, which Humanly, they're not able to identify those data. And they also collect, because it's a banking of insurance, and some of the information they capture and they scan as a PDF image and the story, right? So inside PDF, they also mention card number in a handwritten way. So whether it's possible to identify and take remediation, that was the challenge which they're facing it. So, and one more challenge which many comes across, and which is industry challenge now, the false positives. And in this case study, the account number, the insurance number is almost on the same bin range of the credit card. So there are more of a false positives which was coming. So what we have done is we have automated the tool for this bank, and we have just given a simple process to follow, a single click deployment, whether it's a 1K targets, that is endpoints, or 100K. With a single click, you can deploy, and you can take remediations even inside the PDF images. What we have done is we have brought in AML capabilities, where you can identify, you can take the remediations. So this is some of the key, the pain points of the customers. And this is there are two ways, one is the proactive, other one is the reactive. When it comes to the data, the sensitive data, I think we have to be proactive always. Once if we go into the reactive mode, definitely the breaches are going to occur, the organization images will tarnish. So this is one of the fast growing bank in Asia. They're just given us information that proactively they did run the tool, but they could identify 12,000 customers sensitive data which are at their dormant accounts, which is a huge number, 12,000 customers data, right? So this is how the proactive approach of discovering data across all the platforms will help you. So just with this, the presentation ends here. So I'll just open up for the Q&A. So please do post your questions in the chat window. So we'll try to take those questions. So over to you, Pradeep.
Thanks. Thanks, Venkatramana and Aravinda Patra. As we wait for the questions to come, thanks, Aravinda, for throwing light on sensitive data and data privacy regulations and how the data leak happens, right? And why should we protect the sensitive data and how the discovery of the data should happen. And Venkatramana, thank you for throwing light on the radar tool, which is a hybrid tool, which is one of the kind of product where usually the products would be either in-house or cloud. It won't support both. So it's very glad to hear that it's an hybrid tool. And thanks for bringing out the notion of trust of client when it is lost, how difficult it is to bring back a client again to the bank.
Absolutely, absolutely, yes.
And also thanks for throwing some light on the case studies and proactive versus reactive, right? So as we wait for the questions, I had a question when I was hearing about the SISA RADAR tool, right? What's the lead time you would be looking at to do this implementation analysis and come out of the report, Venkat?
Yeah, so what we talk about the implementation here is 30 minutes implementation when the prerequisites are ready. So the tool will be up and running within 30 minutes once the prerequisites are ready. So there's so fast we can do it. We say 2 hours, but we can make the tool running within 30 minutes of the time. Yeah.
Okay. So is there a provision for the, let's say as a bank, if a customer is interested in the tool, is there a provision where you run it in their UAT bed and provide them some insights? And if they are happy with those insights, we run it on the live and take it to the next level. Something like a sandbox kind of an environment. Do you have that?
Absolutely, yes. A very good question, Pradeep. Yes, we do initiate a POC at environment, and we also try to understand. So while initiating a POC, we also understand the client environment. We can also suggest best suitable tool, and the tool also we can customize and deliver if required for that particular bank, because entire each and every organization is different, right? So they may need a specific features that can be customized. So we initiate a POC and we understand what is their challenges, and we can do that.
Okay. Now, question to Aurobindo. You were talking about data classification, right? So let's say as a bank, so we have most of our customers as bank. So how should they start this process of classification? Which one should they consider as sensitive medium to high, low sensitive, etc.
Yeah. So definitely, that's a good question. So for banking sectors, right? So definitely, the first and easiest way to identify the data is what data we are storing first. You should know what data we are storing, like from your application, what are the data we are storing, what are the various applications we are using, and what are the various customer data you are storing. Okay. So you can also classify the database. Okay, which are the structured data. So basically, there are many ways of doing it. One is like we can review it, we can run the data discovery and classification tool to identify. Because few of the things you, as a design, you'll know that these are the data we are storing it. Few of the things you may not know that these are the data which you are not storing and where it's not stored. So we can run and we can classify and we can identify them.
Okay.
And then coming to the other the unstructured data, right? So now your customer care executive or any developers or database admin, they may get the data from the systems, and they can store, or they can copy the data and they can store anywhere. Okay, which is not known to anyone. Okay.
Okay.
So to classify that data is becoming very challenging, because it can be like huge. There might be like 1,000 or 2,000 number of systems. Okay. And the files can be anywhere, right? It's like, as I mentioned, in cloud or anywhere it can be. So you need to discover it, and you cannot do it manually, basically. Okay. So, and then once you discover, then the criticality level based on basically companies or banks, they can like the credit card numbers or CVV numbers, right, or track 1, track 2 data. These are the highly sensitive data for the banking organizations. So they can definitely take the sensitive data. Okay. And now the confidential data, like similar to any kind of sectors, like you can look at your HR data or your IP data, like or your suppose you are storing any bank account details of customers. Those things also you can make it as sensitive data. Right? A few of the data like emails or names or phone numbers, those can be like for your internal purpose. Okay, so it can be internal. The critical data level can be internal.
Okay.
And different kind of remediations options has to be taken care for different critical data level. Okay. Like internal, you can share maybe within your partners, like suppose your margins and all those things, you can share it. But few of the data you cannot store, share with your partners also. So
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Aravinda, for that.
Yeah.
And I really thank Aravinda and Venkat for throwing light on the sensitive data part. Also, before we wind up, if you can throw some light on other competencies or other product line, what SISA does, if any one of you just give a glimpse to our esteemed customers, right? So that in case if they are interested in any of those products, they can touch base our marketing team, and we can take it further. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Pradeep. So SISA, as said that we are there for close to 2 decades in the global market. So we provide compliance services like PCI DSS or which is related to the PCI complaints, either PCI PIN or when you talk about PCI S3. So we also provide risk and compliance services related to the GDPR once again, which is once again the Privacy Act when we are talking about. One side we provide a risk and compliance services related to GDPR, HIPAA, CCPA, or NIST or SOC 1. And other side we also have tools here, right, to support, complement each other here. And then we also provide security testing services where you talk about RPT, or where you talk about security testing or API testing. Including source code review we do under security testing, and net security as VA as well as PD. Then we also have red team exercise, which I think which is required now because of the breaches are occurring. So we can also provide red team exercise for the organizations. When we come into the cyber resilience, we do have MDR, which is we call it a SISA ProAct, which is in-house, which is located in SDC center. So where we manage detection response solution 24/7 support we provide, as well as incident and response, which includes forensic readiness audit we do, and we also do a global being a global PFI, which is authorized by Visa, Master, as well as PCI SSC. So we are also globally PFI, and we are one of the top 4 who does that PFI investigations. Of course, this will not come as a service, but definitely we can do as a forensic readiness audit and incident response, like retainer service also we can provide. And the other side, when we talk about the data protection, as we today's topic about sensitive data, we have a tool like SISA RADAR. One is which provides for the PCI related, which is card data discovery, and we have other version where it provides PII as well as CDD, and it also has an automated classification tool. Here we also provide, if any organizations has got challenges running the tool because of the expertise, we also provide as a service, also data discovery as a service. We generate reports and we provide them, and they can take the remediations. And we have a training which is CPISA, and we have CPISA advanced, where across the globe more than thousands of professionals has been trained to our experienced training team. These are the few services and products what we have. And across the globe, we have many customers. Just to name it few, we have given here, either NMB or FMB, you call it as, or the HDFC Bank, or you call it as Broadcom. These are our global Fortune 500 customers. There are many. Just to name few.
Sure. Thanks. Thanks, Venkat, for the brief introduction of your products. And I thank Aurobindo and Venkat again for the enlightening session. And I thank our esteemed customers who make time out of their busy schedule and joined our session. Thanks, everyone, and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining, and thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.